Oh, Stephen Lewis, it feels like it is way overdue for us to be recording an episode of the podcast together.
Very excited and absolutely can't wait to start.
Well, then let's do it. How do we know each other?
So a very long time ago, I saw a post, Liz, that you did on LinkedIn, and it was very moving. It was very powerful, and it struck me like a thunderbolt, really. And so I messaged you, and I never did that. That was not a thing that I did. And there were loads and loads of comments from other people and well-wishing and everything else. And basically, I didn't expect anything back. It was just, I think this is amazing. Thank you for putting this out there. And you replied. And that was it. We were up and running. We then got in contact and, phone and screen and everything else. And of course, we still haven't met in person, but that will happen. So, all these years later, this fabulous friendship has grown and been absolutely amazing. So thank you for replying. Yeah, that was it. That was how we met.
That is exactly how I remember it as well. And I do remember your surprise when I responded. And although it took quite a bit of time for me to respond to everyone, because as you said, I received inordinate number of messages in response to talking about my own mental health crisis and recovery. It was really important to me that I did respond, even if it was just to say thank you. Because when someone reaches out, you reach back. And that is why I'm still here. So for me, it's very natural. And when I think about social media and all of our online interactions, there are a lot of harms that can come from that. And as this conversation will show, as our friendship has shown, there's also a lot of great things that can come from it. It's all about how we use the tools.
Couldn't agree more. It was just a wonderful, wonderful thing. And I'm just so pleased that, the friendship developed. And one of the triggers, apart from the fact it was so beautifully written and so heartfelt, your original post, was the fact that we'd both gone through very dark times, almost exactly the same time. And therefore that had a real resonance for me. It's sort of like we were kindred spirits, sliding door moments, whatever you want to call it, identical times. So that's why it had such a powerful effect on me.
I'm glad it did. I'm glad you reached out. And like you said, when I think about the evolution of our friendship, I also think about the evolution of each of us, especially from a professional perspective, because at the time, you and I were both in very much corporate roles in a corporate world. You as general counsel, and at the same time as I came to learn about you, you are someone who combines right and left brain. You are deeply analytical. You are so well versed in not just the theory, but also the practical application of legal, regulatory frameworks internationally. And you are also a gifted storyteller. And I remember the first time you started telling me about screenwriting and about really crafting narratives, that I started to realize just the incredible passion you have for this work, and to see it now having come to fruition, to see it out in the world is remarkable. And to me, that is the blooming and blossoming of Stephen. So I would love, since I know, but the folks listening don't, what are you up to right now, and what are you excited about with it?
Oh, so I came up with an idea called Heroes Have Heroes about 20 months ago. And the genesis, the spark for the idea was at exactly that dark time that we both had, Liz. And so I started listening to podcasts for the first time. So I would take the dog out for a walk, and there were two that I really loved. One was called the High Performance Podcast. It only just started, and this was also during lockdown, so very strange times. And also the grandmother of them all, Desert Island Discs, which have been running for 80 years, which is an amazing thing. So two things they gave me was structure. I could go out and I could lose myself in other people's worlds. But more than that, it was the fact that they were just so inspiring and gave me hope, because it was people talking about their dark times frequently, although there's lots of the highs of their career as well. And I could tell that, the secret was just putting one foot in front of another, in front of another. And after months or maybe a year or whatever, you would come out the other side, and chances are you'd probably be a better person. You would develop new skills. And so they were a huge part of my rehabilitation, those two programs. So jump cut to 20 months ago, I just thought, wow, wouldn't it be amazing to do something similar, but where you can see the people, and where it's, because of my film background, where it's filmed like a movie. And I wanted something that would really get people talking and opening up. So I thought, well, what about the nearest and dearest? What about the mums, the dads, the teachers, their football coaches, those people that inspired them when they were in their teens, their formative years? And so that was it. The idea came to me. Everyone I spoke to seemed to think it was a great idea. And so we shot a pilot episode that went beautifully. We then did like a film premiere. We had all the great and good there. The reception was off the charts. So we then got the financing together. Then we shot series 1 in March of this year, 8 episodes. That went beautifully, probably the best 3 days of my life. Absolutely loved it. And then we put it out on social media sort of from April onwards. And I think we're coming up to about 5 million views in total of all the clips. So the reception has been fantastic. So now back to drawing board, do all the financial modeling, look at all the data analytics, and look as to how we're going to progress. And the aim is to try and partner with a streamer and a broadcaster for the long form, and then for the short form, have corporate partner, and go from there.
It's amazing to me to hear the story and also think about how it started as this sort of kernel of an idea. And knowing Mrs. Lewis, I know that she's been involved in it. So I know that she won't be mad that you said that the filming of it was the best 3 days of your life, because she's been involved with it. And you've also had the support of your children. How has it been collaborating with your spouse in this space?
Oh, it's been a wonderful thing. The joke, I've never mentioned this to you, Liz, is that during lockdown, Helen thought, we've got lots of amazing friends, and maybe I should interview them. And she did about 25 interviews, and they then gave them to the school as sort of a careers thing. So she actually claims that she created heroes before I did. It's a moot point, but so that's the teasing that goes on. But in terms of working together, we started when we first met working. We had a production company, and we were making music videos and documentaries, and we ended up making a feature film together. So it feels like it's come full circle, and it feels absolutely lovely. It's very easy, isn't it, when you're very busy, to sort of just get on and do your things and, not really swap notes. But when you're working on the same project together, it's a lovely, lovely feeling. So that's worked really well. And obviously, Guy was working on the shoot, and that's been very helpful. And then Clara obviously, beats me up and says, why are you choosing that guest, or why are you putting those social media clips out, etc. So her sort of 15-year-old perspective is a very useful thing. She consumes a lot of media, and therefore she knows a lot about it.
She's also quite opinionated, and I have no idea where she gets that from.
All from Helen. That's all I can say. Yeah, no, it's all from Helen. No, Clara wants to be a performer, and so she really gets it. And she has got that left brain, right brain thing going on. She does very well academically, but ultimately she wants to go into musical theatre. That's her true passion. So, it's great. She's got the options. If she ever wants to do something else, she can, but that's the path that she's going down at the moment.
So, something I'm curious about with heroes, I would never ask you to pick your favorite guest or your favorite episode because that would be like picking your favorite child. I am curious, though, what are the moments that stand out to you from series one?
Oh, it was just the fact of how quickly the guest said yes. I thought it was going to be very difficult, but they all seemed to get it. They all seemed to get the fact that it was an evergreen thing, that the material was all about their life and aspects of their life that they would never normally get to talk about. It's about the personal things rather than the sort of the career things. So that was great. In terms of the actual shoot, the emotion, a very funny little story was the fact that about 20 minutes into the first shoot, one of the guests started crying and I start crying. So the sound guy stops the shoot and comes over to me and says very quietly, "I'm really sorry, Stephen, but the microphones are picking you up crying. We're going to have to move you." So they put me in a little corner all by myself. So that was very memorable. I love the fact that every single episode is so different. Some of them are very thought-provoking. Some of them are very funny. Some of them are very sort of inspirational. So to me, just as every guest has very, very strong and different personality that really shines through. So the one thing I was worried about before we filmed series one was that maybe, it would be a bit samey, and it couldn't be further from the truth. You might watch one episode and think it's absolutely fantastic and might be left a little bit cold by another one because the tone is completely different, but the tone is different for every single episode. And so, yeah, I think they're the sort of standout moments for me. And as I say, I couldn't pick one guest. That would be like choosing my favorite child. It's just not possible. Every single episode, Liz, one of my friends or family said, "That's my favorite." Every single one. I assumed that there would be one or two that would be the standout, but it's so evenly split across all the episodes, which is great. It's exactly what I wanted to achieve.
Well, and I love that I got some very gentle ribbing when I shared on LinkedIn one of the episodes. In fact, it was the first episode, which remains my favorite. My favorite guest being Phil Tufnell, the great British cricketer, because I love sport and I loved his authenticity and the fact that he didn't shy away from the fact that his life is not a fairy tale. He was not a goody two shoes for most of his career. And he is able to talk very frankly about his life without trying to make himself the hero of his story. And that was one of the things that I've really taken from the series is that each of the people who appear is a hero to someone, and all of their cases, I mean, a hero essentially to many. And every one of them has something, and I think it's just part of the hero myth. Every one of them has had something that has knocked them for a loop. Hearing their own stories, and particularly at the end, the letters, hearing their words to their heroes, I find it really profound and meaningful because so much of what we see when it comes to heroes being presented in media is lionizing them and glossing over the more challenging portions of their narratives. And you really tackled that head on. And I'm curious, how do you feel in this space of talking to people who are quite revered for very good reasons, and at the same time, tackling and negotiating information content about their background it's hard. Like, it's hard to talk about, it's hard to look at. How are you navigating that tension?
I People have asked me very similar thing, which is basically how do you get people to talk so openly and authentically? And I think essentially it goes from the beginning to the end. All the people in the team are absolutely lovely and doing it all for the right reasons. And I think that comes across to the guests, the way that our agent approaches their agent, the way that it's all structured. The researcher, Kate, does an amazing job in terms of the questions. I think they're incredible. When they arrive on set, we try to put them at ease immediately, chatting away in hair and makeup, etc. The way the set is lit, the people who we had two fantastic people doing the interviewing for series one. So every single thing is designed to try and put the guests at ease. And some of the guests immediately relax into it and you know that it's their authentic self. Some of the guests, it takes 10, 15 minutes into the interview, but you can almost see it happening where they just think, oh, this is a safe space. I can genuinely be me. And that's a wonderful thing. And for a lot of the guests, what we captured has never been seen before. It's a side of them that you've never ever seen. They have their public persona and the mask has never changed. And so I think it's fascinating and heartwarming to see people just opening up and essentially probably being as they are with their family and friends. And I think that reassures us as an audience that we don't have to be perfect and we are flawed and we do make mistakes and that, we learn and we grow. So I think that's how it works.
As you were going through the process of filming season one, were there any moments where you had real doubt about what you were doing? And how did you persevere through that?
We did the pilot episode. I think that's where my doubts were because we set it all up and, it was a big deal. And 5 minutes into the pilot episode, I was so weeping. It makes me sound like I cry a lot. I very rarely cry, but I do seem to on set. And the reason was twofold. One was because it was going so beautifully and it was very powerful. But the second reason was I realized that it worked. You could just feel the electricity. You could feel the magic. And so it was a huge relief. So by the time we did series one, I was pretty confident that we were going to do something amazing. So the worries were much more logistical about timings and, people getting there and camera angles and, staying on topic with the guests, etc., etc. I knew that it worked, so the format worked, and it was much more about making it run smoothly. And we wanted the guests to have the best time possible. And all of the guests said one of two things at the end of it, at the end of each shoot. They either said, this is the best interview I've ever done by a country mile, or some of them said, this is one of the best things I've ever done. And they all said, yeah, it was a bit like very lovely therapy. So that was really, really nice. And the other little sort of coda to all that was when we sent out the interviews for the guests to review, normally you'll have a string of notes come back saying, if you could change that, wasn't so happy with that, etc. We sent out the first one, no notes, sent out the second one. And so Tom, our producer, he said, he just said, you don't realize how ridiculous this is. This never happens. I've been doing this for 20 years. All 8 episodes, not one single change was requested by the guests. So I think we got it. I think they were absolutely thrilled with what we captured.
I'm curious what you've learned about yourself in this process.
Oh, crikey, that's a difficult question. that I'm much more emotional than I probably realised, hence all the tears. I think that's something I've learned from the episodes. So there are numerous things that the guests have said, and you just sort of, the Russell Kane, the British comedian, which I think is a fantastic episode, and he's very left field. His brain works so fast. And one of the things he says is that most people spend their time looking and fretting over what's happened and then sort of forward projecting to a future that may or may not happen. And then he just shouts, "Wake up!" And because, live in the moment. And I've certainly been guilty of those two things. And so actually the pearls of wisdom that are scattered throughout the series, I've taken on board and I try and incorporate them. So definitely it's changed me as a person. Definitely.
I love that you identified that it helped you to realize that you were more emotionally connected than you might have realized before. And that having these moments where you are hearing someone else's story and the resonance for you, as well as just this sense that something magical is being created here. And that really just that brings out all of these feelings. It brings out so much in you because this is, in many ways, I think of it as sort of the culmination of a lot of the things that you've done before. When you work on feature films, you're not necessarily really digging into a real person's actual story as told by them. Boardroom, representing your company as its general counsel, you are presenting, I don't want to say a story in a pejorative sense, but you are presenting a set of facts and you are helping the people in that room to make sense of those facts and understand what it means in terms of implications for the business now and then into the future and the decisions that they have to make based on the current state of affairs. And now here you are in a place where you're looking to amplify stories. And at the same time, you don't have to create drama for these stories. The stories themselves are dramatic. The stories themselves are deeply meaningful. They don't need stagecraft or technique to make them more so. And what I'm curious about is how do you see elements of work you've done throughout your career showing up in how you are crafting this series now, how you're making heroes?
I think that's such an astute question, Liz. It really is completely brilliant, because there were many, many times when I used to look at my career and my life and think it doesn't make any sense. How does that fit with that? And Heroes pulls it all together. Running the business is obviously the sort of corporate side, and that's one element of it. But you're absolutely right. I think corporate life has woken up to the fact that storytelling is a really critical part in, growth and the way that you project yourself. I think that I love the fact that the pressure's off with Heroes in the respect of, if you're writing a screenplay, you write from a clean sheet of paper and it's terrifying. So you use the word amplify. That's exactly right. The aim for Heroes was, there are some people that are naturally good storytellers, and that's just how they are. And there are some people who've got the most wonderful stories, but they're not naturally gifted storytellers. And so the aim was to create a format whereby everyone has a chance to tell their story beautifully. So we help a little bit, with the edits and the way it's structured and everything else. But essentially it is exactly their story, but we're just polishing it a little bit around the edges. And I love doing that. I love the fact it's someone else's story, but it's so relatable, and that I can help them tell their story And the stories, the people, they don't get the chance to do this. They're normally talking about the sporting triumphs or the film triumphs, or they're talking about, various other things professionally, but they don't get the chance to talk about how they actually felt at that moment, or the run up to that big moment, or something that even has nothing to do with the major championships and titles, which is much more close to heart. And they certainly don't get the chance to talk at length about the people that have shaped them and made them the people that they are. And we're all completely shaped by our family and friends. That's absolutely how life is. So I find it crazy that in some ways this has never really been done before, where the emphasis is on those people that have done these amazing things and made huge sacrifices and supported you through thick and thin to get you to where you want to be. I think that it's a wonderful thing. And on other shows, sometimes they touch on it a little bit, but that's the DNA of Heroes is basically saying thank you at length to those incredible people that make these sacrifices for us.
That leads into another question I had for you, which is how has your definition of hero evolved from the time that you started just conceiving of the series to now?
That's such a good one, Liz. And I'm going to tell you a very funny, tougher story that you'll love. So I had to have sort of a half-hour briefing call with all of the guests about a week before. Sometimes it went to an hour. We were getting on brilliantly, and it was lovely. And with Phil, he said, "Yes, I know who they are. I know who my hero's going to be. So obviously it's going to be Mum and Dad." I said, "Is that in?" No. They come as a matching pair. Then he goes all beefy and so on. So I was going, "Oh, that's great." And then he just goes, "Yes, and the Sex Pistols." And it just stopped me in my tracks. I hadn't thought about something like that. I'd thought about individuals. I hadn't thought about institutions. And then he goes, and the RAF. And the RAF story does this magical. So for a split second, I thought, well, do I just say, "Oh, we can't do that, Phil. It's got to be a person." I thought, no, this is their story, and they can tell it exactly how they want it to be. So it's completely changed my idea of what or who a hero can be. And I think that it's made me realize that they fall into broadly two categories. There's the inspirational ones, and they're generally people from my childhood and our adolescence. But actually, it's the ones that supported us. It's the ones in our family and the closest friends that really are the most powerful. And so you'll often have someone talking about, "Oh, when I was 15 and, I'm a tennis player and I wanted to be this person, da, 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 da." And it's relatively brief, and I had their posters on the wall, or I bought their records, or whatever it is. But the really moving, meaningful stories are those when they talk about those people that showed in day in, day out, week in, week out, year in, year out. And that's where they're really moved. And so that's made me realize, about the close circle, that is everything really. It's the people that are there and there for you in the long haul that are the most important in your life and shape our lives and bring us the happiness. So yeah, it's completely changed my view on what heroes are. And I think also the other thing, of course, is the fact that we put people on a pedestal, and modern media does, and the Heroes shows that we're all the same, really. You might be fantastic at playing rugby or cricket, or maybe an amazing scientist or actor or whatever it is. And in that field, you're absolutely brilliant. You're world class. But the rest of your life is just like the rest of us. So I think that Heroes in many ways holds a mirror up to the audience. And I think that's why we've got the fantastic response we have, because people can see that we're all the same and we're all muddling through the best we can. And if we're kind and supportive to each other, that's the best way to move forwards and be happy. And that's what gives us the deep satisfaction of our lives.
I want to dig into that a minute because one of the areas that I spend a lot of time thinking about, because I do so much work in the decentralized social networking and social media spaces and with research into teen online safety, you really see how much there is a divide and a perception that people are all good or all bad. And depending on your political view, your worldview, or other factors, we tend, particularly now because of how social media will amplify social messages, we tend to fall into these places where someone is on a pedestal and then that they are more than just knocked off the pedestal. I mean, they're practically beaten off of it because, as you noted, people can excel in their particular métier, and they may not be that awesome a human in the rest of their lives. Calling someone a hero, in a way, paints them as sort of universally perfect, right? Everything about them must be hero-like. And one of the things that I think the show does really well is it presents people as people. Now, they're people who may have extraordinary skills and abilities and just remarkable achievements. And at the same time, they're people. There's also some folks for whom whatever it is that they've done in their area of expertise or specialization may not, from the perspective of some or all of the general public, make up for what they've done in other aspects of their lives. And human beings are complex. None of us is all good or all bad. And a lot of folks are deeply problematic. So I'm curious how you have thought about curating your guest list when there are people who are fascinating and at the same time deeply polarizing. How do you think about that? And how do you think about how, and I'm going to borrow a line from one of my friends and colleagues. She is a well-noted consulting psychologist. She said to me once, Liz, there's no such thing as a unicorn ally. And I would say there's also no such thing as a unicorn hero. No one is absolutely perfect for everybody. And some people are far more challenging to put on a pedestal or on a stage than others. So how do you think about selecting guests and also recognizing that for many people who have achieved much, they have also had a lot of darkness or really problematic or challenging behaviors in their past or even in their present?
We choose our guests because we think they've got a fantastic story to tell. And also because we're looking for the biggest journeys. So anyone that's had a tough start in life and then gone on to achieve amazing things is automatically quite close to the top of our wish list. The guests, when they come, we do lots of research, but we will not push them into areas that they're uncomfortable. And we haven't had it yet, as I mentioned earlier, but if they genuinely said, I went too far in what I said, I think it's the right thing to remove that from the edit, because ultimately the audience will make up its mind about the level of authenticity. And I can hand on heart say there's not a second of the whole of the pilot and the first series that I don't believe. Every single thing for me was authentic and real. You got the warts and all, I think. And one of the ones that hit me like a sledgehammer when it was shown, and every single time I've watched it since, is Paul Merson. Now, Paul was a very famous Arsenal footballer and also played many, many times for England, and had and still has huge demons that he, has to deal with. And I thought that he was so open. And basically his addictions, his anxiety and his alcohol addiction, his gambling addiction meant that for his children when they were growing up, he was absent, and he feels the guilt like he could not believe, because he says you can't make up the time. And so I think that is a beautiful illustration. And at the end of it, when I went to see him as the camera stopped rolling, we had a massive hug and we were both very tearful. And I just said, thank you. And he said, if that helps one person, then it was a good thing to do. And I think it's incredible what our guests do. They're so willing to expose the darker sides of things that they've done and mistakes that they've made, essentially to help others. I think that seems to be the common theme, and I think that's an incredible thing. And certainly, without that, the show is nothing. If it's not authentic, then there's no point in doing it. So I think that, in the first series, we had people that are generally very, very popular. From time to time in the future, we will probably have people are polarizing, and we will have people where maybe the fascinating one is going to be when we have someone who comes across beautifully, and of course, lots of terrible things come out afterwards. And so I've no idea how that will play out. That will be very interesting, obviously. But I think that anyone who sees the show now, before they come on it, they have to make a decision. If they are a toxic personality, are they going to come on the show? Because it would be very, very difficult with those cameras and the way that it's structured to hide that. I think that the show automatically gravitates to a real high level of truth. And so, yeah, it'll be interesting to see whether we get any guests who just turn us down flat.
Now, these are deeply personal interviews, and yet I don't think about the show as a form of journalism. I almost struggle to categorize it. It's almost as if it is an interview-based form of biography, autobiography. How do you see the difference between reporting and, in a sense, sort of journalism, where you're looking to gather information, and the way that you're telling stories here?
That beautifully observed. Crikey, these are good questions. It's not journalism. That's not the aim. I think you've hit it on the head. We've not really worked out what is it. Is it a podcast of sorts? But it's different. But it's a beautifully filmed autobiography, and it's the phrase that we've got on all our YouTubes is my words, my story. So to that person telling their story, it is their remembering how things were and their version of the truth. And obviously we all have different views. So another very interesting thing it will be when we have other guests who have interacted with our guests, and the version that they give might be quite different. Our job is just to capture the story that they are telling and present it, and let the audience decide as to whether they think it's authentic or not. And so far, I think it absolutely does that. So that I think if we try and do anything else, we could compromise what we do. That is the sole aim of it, to allow people to, and there will be certain celebrities where their public image is very different to how they probably feel about how they truly are. Maybe, the media has presented them in a certain way for years and they just think, well, that's just not me. Or they've changed and grown as a person, and therefore coming on Heroes would be a really, really beautiful way of people saying, oh my word, I didn't realise that actually they were a lot nicer, a lot more thoughtful. I now understand the decisions that they made, etc., etc. So it's really about letting them just tell their story, and then see what happens after that.
So series 1 is complete.
Yeah.
What can you tease for series 2?
So series 2, there's lots of things that've got to be determined, whether we record them and do 1 episode per week or 2 episodes per week and just do it into infinity, or whether we sort of use the TV format and stick to series. We're still not 100% sure on that. I think that it's going to be great going out. I'm going to be very excited because now we can show series 1 to people, and I think there'll be lots of guests who go, "Oh, I love the look of that," and also, the guests will talk to their friends in entertainment and say, "I love doing it. It was a great thing to do." So I think we're going to get some fantastic guests. We learn loads and loads. There'll be little tweaks about how we do it, just to even between in series 1, the first 5 episodes, we didn't really hit our stride in the edit until episode 6. So I've re-edited the first 5 episodes a little bit. They're not the ones that are out there. They still look great, but we just learned so much. So we're going to be incorporating all the things that we've learned just to make it, a little bit better. And so, yeah, I couldn't be more excited about the next series. We had obviously DJ Spoonie, but I'd love to have a really major league musician. I think that'd be a fascinating world to hear about in depth. So yeah, that's high on my list. And a film star would be really nice. I think that would be a lot of fun to get an insight into that world. So yes, lots and lots of stuff coming for series 2 onwards.
Well, that feeds perfectly into the question I also ask everyone. Who do you most want to be talking to right now, and who do you want to be seeking you out?
Oh, so the business side comes first, so the guests follow on from that. So it's basically B2C brands who are very, very interested in what we're doing and who think, I like the values of this, and therefore I'd be really interested in talking to Stephen and Heroes about potentially having partnerships for future series. So that would be great. We're also just about to start talking to the broadcasters and the streamers. So that would be fantastic. So yes, that's the obvious start point. And obviously once we've got all the lovely financing in place, then we can start talking about shoot dates and availability of guests. So yeah, if there's any really strong B2C brands who like the look of what we've done, please get in contact.
Well, I could ask you questions all day because, I'm so fascinated, not just by your work and what it means to you and the future of it, but I could just talk to you all day. But I found something on my desk and I wanted to share it with you before we closed. I found a letter. Dear Stephen, thank you for inspiring me to continue telling my own story. You've taught me that I have no idea of the impact my story and my will to persist will have on others. You are a hero in my life, and I am grateful for your friendship. I am excited for many more years of sharing stories and support and meeting in person.
I'm biting down very hard on my lip, Liz. Oh dear. Very dusty here. There's a lot of tears. Oh my word, that was amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow,
Thank you for coming along. This has been really fun
that
and
was amazing.
more fun into the future.
Thank you very much, Liz. Really,
Thank,
really appreciate it.
thank you.
Bye.